This is something, please understand, young people and parents of young people, please understand that your child, your adolescent now, was born looking for acceptance. And the only way you or any person you love is ever going to find acceptance is in Jesus Christ. The first response to God after sin came into the world was fear. And I told you a moment ago, there's a righteousness and there's an unrighteous. So there's a righteous fear and an unrighteous fear. As a matter of fact, one of the most frequent messages of the Bible, and in Proverbs you see it a lot, is the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. So you haven't actually even gotten to first base when it comes to being a wise person without the fear of the Lord. So there's a righteous fear. That word fear there means to respect or to honor or to awe, literally to be awestruck. So there's a righteous fear. But what happened with Adam and Eve is an unrighteous fear came in. And what you'll see is the number one repeated commandment, and I'm talking about in the imperative form grammatically, in the Bible is fear not. Fear not. Don't be afraid. So nearly every time God shows up or an angel shows up to talk to someone, you'll remember this, angel shows up, and what do they say first? Fear not, or don't be afraid. So why would he say that? It's because that unrighteous fear that came into Adam and Eve when they sinned immediately shows up, and they were, think about this, afraid of God. But God had never done anything that would cause them to have an unrighteous fear of him. Not one time. Nothing. And so here is the thief of devotion, and it's fear. And I'm going to give you the 3 top fears, I believe, and show you God's answer, right? So here's the first one. The number 1 is the fear of rejection. The fear of rejection. Now, you were created by love. Now, I'm going to explain that to you in a minute. You might say to me, no, Pastor Robert, this is pretty simple. Go back to Genesis and read it. I was created by God. Correct. But 1 John 4, verse 8 says, he who does not love does not know God, for God is love. So yes, I agree, we were created by God, but God is, okay, so we were created by love. Correct? Everyone with me? Okay, if we were all created by God, I agree, we were created by God, but if the Bible tells us God is love, then another way of saying it is we were created by love. So if I was created by love, then I was created to love and to be loved. So my number 1 fear is the fear of rejection. You want to know why? Because my number 1 need is love. My number 1 need is acceptance. So if my number 1 need is acceptance, then my number 1 fear is rejection. Let me kind of say this another way. We need to understand that whatever you are afraid of is actually what you will worship. In other words, if you're afraid of rejection, you will worship acceptance. Because you're afraid to be rejected, when someone says something to you, you don't want that person to reject you, and so you'll do everything you can to phrase your answer in such a way that you don't get rejected. And you'll have maybe 3 or 4 conscious memories and maybe hundreds of subconscious memories of being rejected. So you'll think, I don't want to be rejected again. And so I want to answer this question truthfully, but I want to answer it in such a way that this person doesn't reject me because my greatest need is acceptance. Everyone follow me? Now, let me say this. Satan, Paul said, I'm afraid he'll do it the same way he did it with Eve. Okay. Here's what he did with Eve. He tempted her with something she already had. All three of these fears I'm going to show you that they're not correct fears, because what he's tempting you with is something, the answer to it, the solution you actually already have. For instance, his temptation to Eve was, if you eat this, you will be like God. She was already like God. She was made, we use this word a lot, in the image of God, but go back and read it. Genesis 1:26 says, then God said, let us make mankind, that's the word for man there, mankind, in the image, in our image, after our likeness. So she was made in the likeness of God. She was already like God. And Satan says to her, if you'll eat this, you'll be like God. But she was already like God. Now, remember this word, devotion. Remember I said, whatever it is that you're afraid of, you will be devoted then to the opposite of that. Okay, I told you about that the word devotion comes from the word vote. Devote comes from the word vote. The word vote means vow. The word vow means commitment. So whatever it is that you're devoted to, in other words, if you're devoted to acceptance, you're committed to acceptance. So you live your life. Here's the reason that I know so much about this. I've had it for years. I've had this disease. I grew up wanting to be accepted. And so I did anything I could to be accepted. Here's the lie. Let me show you the lie. According to the Bible, Ephesians 1:6, to the praise of the glory of his grace, by which he made, past tense, us accepted, past tense, in the beloved. So what Satan is tempting you with, saying, if you'll do this or say this, you'll be accepted, what your answer needs to be is, I'm already accepted. That's what Eve's answer needed to be. When Satan said, if you do this, you'll be like God, she should have said, I'm already like God. So when Satan tempts you that if you don't do this now, if you don't submit to these peers, if you don't, if you don't try this drug, if you don't take this drink, if you don't, do this, then you're not going to be in the group. What you need to say is, I'm already in the group. And it's a better group than your group. I'm already accepted. When I was, in junior high and high school, I got involved in drugs, and I've told you about that. But the reason I did it was because that group that was doing drugs accepted me. And I didn't think that the popular kids would accept me. And by the way, there was another group that accepted me in high school. It was the rodeo club. And I got in with and started, the thing about this, calf rope and all that would have been great if I had the brains to do that. But I did bull riding. That's stupid. And I'm not saying if you're a bull rider and you're watching, that's stupid, because you're probably great at it. But I didn't have the body to bull ride. Bull riders, if you ever look at them, they're short and stocky. The reason is you want to be close to the bull. The closer you are, the easier it is. I was tall and lanky in high school. You don't see a lot of tall and lanky bull riders. They're dead. I had the wrong body for that. But I did it because that's the group that accepted me. This is something, please understand, young people and parents of young people, please understand that your child, your adolescent now, was born looking for acceptance. And the only way you or any person you love is ever going to find acceptance is in Jesus Christ. That's the only way. Because, so, you got to remember, since our greatest need is love, our greatest fear is rejection. So that's the first one, is rejection.